All right, perfect. We are going. Let's see. Camera's good. All right, so today I've got Parker Langeveld, the president of sales at Hawks Pest Control. Parker, thanks for coming. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day.
Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. So just going to kind of talk with Parker today about his experiences in door-to-door, how he's gotten to where he's gotten, and hopefully get some advice from him to either newer reps looking to get into door-to-door and kind of build that foundation for themselves, or even guys that have been in it for a couple of years. So Parker, if we can, just talk to me about how you got started in door-to-door, how the opportunity was presented, and really just kind of why you chose to jump into it.
That's an interesting story. So I grew up in Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as an LDS guy. Graduated high school, and one of the things that you just kind of do at that age when you're out of high school is you go serve a mission. So I went for 2 years down to South America. Had the opportunity to serve in Chile, learn Spanish, super awesome culturally, and I kind of grew up a lot. It was the first phase in life where I started to kind of think like a man, not a boy. And I think one of the things that impacted me the most, think like a man, when I was on that was your power really always comes from people and relationships in a positive way. And the way that a mission works is there's 100 to 200 kids that are my age, men and women. You have a companion, and then you have an older gentleman and his wife that oversees it as a mission president. And I remember having an opportunity to have a relationship with my mission president that I got to see him in a lot of tough family interactions where he got to come minister and speak and mentor people that needed the gospel. And what was wild is it always seemed like he could accomplish in a day what we could accomplish in a month. He'd walk in and people just automatically trusted him. He had so much wisdom oozing from him. And I think one of the thoughts that really pressed upon my mind and started to feel like, okay, that's a man quality, was the ability to empathize with others, like this ability to have some charity. And I chalked it up that one of the things that would allow me to have that is real life experience, and the easiest way to get that would be travel. Okay, not travel where I was going to Dubai, ripping around in the sand dunes on a monster truck, but I'm talking like living how the people live, seeing their cultural element, what makes them think the way they think, the trials they have, so that I can just relate, that ability to, like Brene Brown talks about, empathize rather than sympathize. So that became kind of a focal point when I came home from my mission. When I first got home, I went to the University of Utah. I took 21 credit hours my first semester. I was double majoring in, believe it or not, two very opposite things. Biochemistry was one, and then the other was I was majoring in philosophy that I thought was cool. I just thought it was fun. I also compete in powerlifting. So at that period of time, I was training at Gold's Gym as a personal trainer. And the owner of the company, I had known him for a long time. He grew up in my neighborhood, reached out and said, "Hey, dude, I got a job opportunity for you. You should come hear it out." I said, "Okay, cool. I'll come hear it out." I never shut doors. You got to think, I had just lived a mission where I got a set allowance every month. I was living at home. I was on a presidential scholarship to school. And I combined that with the fact that I wanted to be a doctor upon graduation. I thought I was going to go make 300 plus grand a year. I wasn't really worried or stressed about money, Donald. I was more worried about a lot of other things. So when I first sat down with him, he tells me, "Okay, cool, man. Here's the job. We sell pest control door to door." And I'd never heard of door to door. So my first sentiment upon hearing that is, I'm like, wait. You're talking about the guys that got out of prison that can't get a normal job, that are going door to door, jumping out of a white van, scamming credit cards out of some warehouse in the Midwest that doesn't exist. And I'm like, bro, I'm not doing that. Like, there's no shot. And he laughed, and he's like, that's not at all what it is. Showed me some more structure to it and how it was a lot more like a sports team than anything else. And guys would have got there in the summer. And he's like, look, you go make 20 grand in the summer. And, as a college student, $20,000 in the summer is unbelievable, especially when it's 1099 income that's not taxed the same way W-2, and I get the write-off ability. So, but being this young, naive kid, I kind of looked at that and I'm like, I don't care about 20 grand. I want to make 300 grand. Like, the money didn't resonate with me because I didn't know the value of it yet. So what really hooked me was, I'm like, well, where are you going? He's like, oh, we're going to Dallas. And as soon as he said that, I'm like, where's the paperwork? I'll sign it. And he laughed and he's like, wait, what triggered in your head? And I'm like, bro, I've never lived down there. I've never seen the people live that way. I have this mission to, like, get myself some travel under my belt, to empathize with others and be a more mature individual. So I'm gonna jump on that. So I signed and trained that off season and ended up going out for the first summer and didn't know what the heck I was doing. The first day was a real shell shocker to me. My buddy and I roped one of my best friends into coming and doing it with me. His parents didn't really know. They were skeptical as everything was normal. And we went out there, didn't even really know a pitch, just free balling it, talking to people. Hey, if they sign up, what do I do? And I'm like, I don't know. I'll figure it out on the app. And long story short, after dealing with that for about a week, I ended up by the end of the summer kind of breaking a national revenue record. And I made over $200,000 as a rookie in just 3.5 months at 20 years old. I'd never done that before. And so the company gave me an opportunity to say, hey, you should come back and manage. Why would I do that? Oh, well, you'll make even more money. What am I going to do with more money? I didn't know what to do with that. So the reason that I chose to pursue management, though, is that it was such a positive cultural experience for me. It taught me how to do hard things, and it was such a financial liberation. Obviously, that was well above what a lot of the other rookies made, but I wanted all my friends to come do it to have similar opportunities. So we roped up 55 friends and came back, and ever since, it was just kind of a niche that I had done well with, that we were all able to provide incredible financial structure for ourselves. It was a simple enough product that did what we said it did, and it taught really valuable life skills. So I kind of stuck with it, but that's what roped me into it in the first place, Don.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, that's a great story. I guess if you can kind of remember a little bit about your first summer, I mean, what was it like for you going out there with, potentially a little bit of sales experience, but, not as much as you have now, obviously, but, what was that like for you kind of experiencing that for the first time, but also how were you able to succeed so well with just only a couple months in that very first summer?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that if I were to remember back, I think there was the normal anticipated butterflies and fears of what if I don't do well, and there's pressure there, and what if I don't make anything. I think a lot of mine was not as bad because I knew I had a couch I could crash on with mom and dad that were supportive. And they weren't entirely supportive. My mom is very much more of her generation: go to school, get a job, get a house in the suburbs, and that's how you do it. So she didn't like that I was going to be commission only and structured that way. She wasn't super fond of it. My dad had grown up in sales, so he had a little more understanding. Obviously, there was nerves that I'm going to another state, that you hope that everything pans out how it's said to be panned out. But I remember driving down there. I didn't even know what car to take. I only had a car that had like 180,000 miles on it. I didn't want it to blow up driving 30 hours to Texas. So we got another guy to come out with us, another friend that quit after 2 days and took our only car. So we ended up having to ship mine out there anyway. And it seemed like that's what happened when you got out there, that there were just, at first, there were more things going wrong than right, just in the form of, dude, that day was harder selling than I thought. And that guy just took his car, and I just got cussed out by somebody on their doors. But I just think that I kind of always had this attitude from day one that, look, man, I'm an agent that acts and not an object that gets acted upon. And I can do anything for 3 months. So they can cuss me out, they can do whatever, but I'm going after the American dream. And, I dictate my worth. And I wanted to develop a skill set that I was the opportunity instead of I had to find the opportunity. And I knew this beat the brakes off of sitting in an AC office somewhere watching Netflix with my free time, making 15, 16 bucks an hour, that quite frankly may have been easier and safer on that low threshold. But for where I knew I wanted to get to in life, I knew I needed a bigger skill set to pay to play and play ball there. And so I think that's what fueled me to stick it out, push through the learning curve. I had a lot of internal motivation to figure out how to do well, that I just said, if I'm out here doing it, I may as well do it the best I possibly can. And I think that's what made the difference. I was the first one on the doors and the last one off as a rookie. People would tell me no, and I would keep pushing. And I realized that, it was such a cheap product, I wasn't going to make anyone go broke over it. One, two, they were going to spend the money anyway with something else. I saw that. It was wild to me. Like, started to pay attention to how much people spend on gas station energy drinks and fast food and Candy Crush on your phone. And so I really ended up having no guilt asking them to spend their 50, 60 bucks a month with a service that would take care of their home, that I knew did what it said it was going to do, because I knew they were going to go spend that on beers or whatever else anyway. And then the other thing is I started realizing, like, what I'm selling isn't really impacting somebody's life one way or another. Like, it's not that big of a decision. So at the end of the day, I'm really just selling myself on the doors. As long as I'm honest, my product does what it says it's going to do, then they're buying me. That's really what they're doing. It's such an insignificant thing that they're investing into my future and the ability of me to provide the way I want to for my family, to live the lifestyle I want to live, and then to give back and mentor others to say, hey, you can aspire for greater things. So I think having that fueled on the door made me push through 2 or 3 extra no's, and maybe not feel bad when I got cussed out, or when somebody said, "Get a real job, why are you knocking on doors?" Or when it was 115 degrees out there, then they're like, I would go hit the pavement and do the heat anyway. So I really think it was that attitude and that why that was fueling me underneath that created above average success as compared to your average Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess kind of segueing onto a little bit more about your success as, personal production goes. Talk to me about, I think this is, definitely one of the more impressive stories that I've, ever heard in the door-to-door space when it comes to pest control. But talk to me about, your biggest summer as a rep, and kind of talk me through, some of the mental battles that you had doing that, and kind of talk me also through how you were able to put yourself in that position to become, that rep that produced, what you're about to tell me you produced.
So my biggest summer was my third summer. I did 1,015 accounts in 62 days, 62 actual knocking days that I hit the doors. But I really think that number was 3 years in the making. And I'll tell you why. My first summer, by the end of the summer, I was producing on pace that I was doing. If the average guy does 12 to 15 accounts in a week, I was able to hit 65 to 70 accounts in a week on a consistent basis as a rookie. The problem was, and I'm really open with this, is at the time I really struggled for whatever reason. I don't know that there was really a thumb on it for anything, but I had really bad anxiety and depression. And I was 20 years old, didn't quite know how to cope with that. So a full summer's May to August. In the month of August, I couldn't even get out of bed. I ended up being in bed, and I just would shut my blackout curtains and sleep because I felt so depressed. And I was really open. I would call the owner, and I would call my dad and talk about it. But I was just crippled by that feeling that I think becomes more and more cumbersome and apparent in today's society where we feel those feelings. And so I knew I needed to start getting a hold on that. But I think the second year I used a lot of external things where I became a very codependent person instead of self-dependent person. And what I mean by that is I found a girlfriend at the time that was then my fiance, and looking back in retrospect, it was a pretty unhealthy narcissistic relationship, but it helped me feel less lonely. She came out with me my second summer. I think I started to place a lot of self-worth on accomplishments in whatever it was, in work and in lifting and so as long as those things were doing well, then I was a winner. But if I started to, for whatever reason, hit a rut in those things, then I was a loser. And so I think trying to manage a team and then go sell the second summer, I think there was still that level of emotional instability that, hey, if Parker's feeling emotionally solid today, he's going to go have a breakout day. But if not, then I was so afraid of even selling because I felt like everyone, if I didn't hit that number I needed to hit, everyone would be like, oh, dude, that guy's a fraud. See, he's not as good as what we thought he was. And I self-projected and I self-harmed in that sense that, I just was like, well, I can't go knock anyway then. And so there was a lot of days that second summer that I didn't go knock. But the reason I say all this is I think that talent-wise, I think that's really just been a gift of mine, being able to sell. And I had the ability to do that summers 1 and 2. But what held me back was the ability to fully emotionally commit to it, because I had so many other things in life that were bubbling underneath the surface. And so that before that third summer, I had been 2 years in therapy. I had really tackled some vices that were mine at that point in my life. I had really, really handled all those things in my personal life that are off-piste, P-I-S-T-E, with work, that now allowed me to have more of a smooth road in work and really pour my talents into it instead of them getting sidetracked down a rabbit hole. And at that point, it was easy. It was just as simple as, all right, I know what to go do. And I didn't feel any different. The anxiety and depression were still there. I just had healthier ways to cope with it and offload it. And even when I felt that, act anyway. And I think that that's really what allowed me to have that breakout summer that year. It wasn't that I learned some magical pitch, or it wasn't that I learned some, insane sales tactic. I just think that would be my number one advice, that if you want to really break out from the pack, those that really learn how to do that, is that you have emotional self-mastery that allows you to just go plug yourself into something that's that grueling day in and day out, because it's hard, dude. The summer's this crazy machine that it's so hard on you emotionally that it will cause any coping mechanisms, positive or negative, in the form of vices or virtues, to bubble up and express themselves. And it took me two and a half years to turn vices into virtues, where it allowed me to then really accelerate at that high of a level. So I think that's kind of the secret sauce there that I did. Don.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think a lot of what people kind of don't realize about this job is that a lot of it is mental. The sales aspect of it, obviously the trainings and whatnot are super important, but being able to kind of mentally get through the day to day is
Well, and
definitely one of them.
Don, I think I'd even challenge that and say that I think it's emotional more than mental. I think when we
Right.
think mental nowadays, we think David Goggins, that I'm just going to white knuckle that shit and it's going to be okay. And
Yeah.
when I'm saying strength there, I'm saying take a page out of a woman's playbook. Have a little bit more self identity on what you're feeling and feel okay to feel that, but act anyway. And rather than just like push that out and become completely stoic on things, it's okay to be a real human being and express that and understand I'm going to feel these things and have healthy ways to cope and offset them and become a full, healthy human being. I mean, that's I think a natural stepping stone to becoming a leader later on down the road too. It allows you to have what I talked about at the beginning with empathy, whereas white knuckling it never really accomplishes any of that. So at the end of the day, I think that yes, it requires mental locking in, but at the same time, understanding that this job's going to be extremely boring. It's going to become repetitive during the summertime, where I've done my pitch 1,000 times and I've heard the same rebuttals over and over again, and then it's going to become really emotionally taxing. When I'm in that bored state or it's hot and I'm already physically like spent, somebody's going to come out there and cuss me out, tell me to get the f off their property because they answered the door drunk. Like they're there, and so at that point, it's just I have to have a strong enough why of understanding like I do now what others don't, so I can live later how others can't, and I can give back how they can't as well to my family, my future kids, those that are around me, combined with the fact that I need to have a pretty high EQ and emotional awareness if I want to compete in the top 1% of what we're doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. Kind of transitioning into more of Hawks and how you got involved with the company that both of us are with now. Talk me kind of through those beginning stages and how you ultimately chose to kind of become the president of sales at Hawks, or at least try to go down that path.
Well, so I already kind of told you about years 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Second year was a big growing year for me. I brought out a big team of rookies, and it was hard to manage. And I had a few of them that did really well that wanted to come back. And so the third year was the year that we actually downsized and went from like 55 to 21 and brought that team out to Houston and opened. And that was probably my hardest year, honestly, Don, because I felt like I spent 12 months building up this team. We went out there, the team didn't perform overly well, in large part to a lot of extemporaneous circumstances outside of sales with both them and I. So it was kind of like, okay, what do I do at this point in time? Like, I think there was a very big humbling moment there to swallow and say, hey, but I built the wrong way, so I got to reset here. And I did. We brought a small team out, and that team that next summer absolutely kicked trash. PRA was through the roof. It was, I think, if not the top, one of the top in the industry, pound for pound, with all rookies. I had broken that fastest gold door, so that at that point in time, I got on a public podcast and started to kind of create more of a personal branding and be more well known in the space itself in the industry. And then that upcoming year, I ended up taking more of a training role on with the company and going out, kind of traveling to the offices. I broke the national revenue record in 1 week that year, and even though the previous year I had big weeks, my biggest was probably 70 to 80 deals. I went out that 1 week to Dallas and did 130 deals serviced in a week, which was just astronomical. I got on a second podcast from there and talked about how the secret isn't always what people will tell you, where it's work harder, it's get better. Because if you just keep working harder, you're going to blow up your engine. You can't rev at 5,000 RPMs forever. You got to drop the RPMs down, but just go faster at lower RPMs, get a bigger engine. And then I think it was just kind of a natural evolution. The space itself, as far as on the business side that we won't get into on this podcast, the economics turned a little bit where private equity became more of a viable avenue than your traditional merger and acquisition. Outside of that, I got an offer at the same time that the business started going another direction outside of door-to-door to go consult. So I left and openly consulted with Sam Taggart, the door-to-door experts, for a bit. They're pretty well known in the space. Then I branched off and kind of with a really good friend of mine that was actually a partner at door-to-door experts. We started our own consulting shop, and that was fun. We did it from small to big-sized companies in a bunch of different industries, and now it wasn't just the sales side. It was all of it, dude. It was the financial side. It was staging yourself for an acquisition. It was learning to read the economics and the numbers. It was operating a profitable company and how to build out an operational team and a customer service center, and it's the full thing. And so I think at that point in time, I had a bunch of friendships that were made in consulting And my dream's always been this. I've always been the guy, and I mean this when I say this, that instead of me wanting to make 5 million a year, it's like, dude, if I could have 5 of my best friends work with me and all 5 of us make 1 million instead of one make 5 million, that's my dream. It's like that's enough. I can go invest that into whatever business I want. I can employ a good tax strategy. I can live a healthy. And so that was what I wanted. I just thought that in the back of my mind. I'm like, geez, wouldn't it be fun if these 5 guys that I'm working with that I love so much, we could all go work for one company? And in the meantime, that's when Hawks kind of had Mike Paulus step in. When that's a separate story for another day. But that's where he came in and bought it and wanted to take it big and had the capital to kind of make something happen. And so really it had less to do with Hawks coming over. Hawks was just the right place at the right time. And it had a lot more to do with Riley that you guys work with over at Forge and these other guys that, are quite frankly some of my best friends that I'd go to war with, dude, and have their back no matter what. And it just panned out that we could all come over here at the right time in the right place and work together and build together. And that's why I've stayed. That's why I've continued to grow over here. That's what's fun about it, is that there are guys that I implicitly trust at that level that are super talented, that are where I'm weak, they're strong, and that we can kind of build out a brotherhood where work isn't work. It's just kind of a lifestyle. And that's mostly how that's played out for me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. I think potentially expanding a little bit on the Mike Paulus thing, would help people kind of understand why Hawks is kind of in the position that they are in to foster so much growth. So you kind of mentioned that Mike Paulus came in and acquired Hawks from kind of an executive position. How has that acquisition kind of put Hawks in a position to be able to grow at such a massive percentage compared to some of these other companies in the industry?
Well, the answer is cash flow. So for those that are listening that don't know, I mean, outside of Utah, and I think Utah becomes what we call like the mecca of door-to-door, just because you get a lot of these LDS missionaries that are so used to having the skill set to go knock doors serving a mission anyway, that it just makes sense for them to apply that to this. At the end of the day, here's the why door-to-door becomes viable on the business side. If I'm a Wall Street executive looking on business, like, door-to-door is of value to me because there is no other machine that will put on customers as fast as door-to-door will. Okay, no matter what. Any type of good marketing strategy only acquires those that are already in the market, or you can capture their attention and then buy your product. Whereas door-to-door, I'm driving into anyone and everyone, getting how many at-bats every single day of people that didn't even know it existed in the first place. So at the end of the day, it burns extremely hot, right? But at the same time, anything that burns hot burns fast. Does that make sense? So when I say burn fast, it means that naturally you would retain a customer longer if I acquired them organically, where they came to me instead of I went to them. It just makes sense. Okay? Whereas if they bought a product because I drove it to them, they won't generally retain as long. It's also very expensive to grow that way because the job is so hard. I think people that aren't familiar with door-to-door can hear what you make in a summer and they're like, there's no way, that's a scam, dude. You see it on YouTube all over the place, dude. People are like, what? You can make this much? And it's like, yes, but make no mistake, the reason you can make that much is the job is extremely hard. It's not hard like you think of an MLM or something where it's like, oh, dude, I got to try to, it's like luck of the draw, I got to sign up as much people. No, it's hard because every day you're getting smoked in 100-degree weather. You're knocking 200 doors. You're moving 14 miles a day trying to do it. You have to be mentally locked into every pitch on every door like a chess match. That's sales. It's not where I can just be physically checked in, but my mind's elsewhere like any other job normally that I can work. So at the end of the day, it would make sense that not as many people want to do it, and those that do it are going to get paid a lot more. So companies understand this, and as a result, it's not necessarily the most profitable avenue long-term for a company to only grow via door-to-door, right? But they want to do it at the beginning because it can take me, I mean, dude, Mike Paulus, before he bought us, ran 2 other companies. One of them, they did door-to-door insurance with 15,000 independent contractors across the nation, and in 1 year, they did over $100 million in revenue added. So it's like, dude, that's not even 1 year. That's their 2nd year in business, Don. Yeah, now, you mention to me any other company out there that does $100 million in revenue year 2 that doesn't door-to-door, and you hear that and you're like, what the, are you kidding me? And that's what it can do. But here's the unique play where Mike comes in at, is that him knowing that it burns really hot, really fast, well, dude, the guy already sits on a mountain of cash. So he can do 2 things. Like if you and I started a company just via door-to-door, then all of our cash flow goes towards funding that vehicle. So I don't sit on this extra reserve of cash without taking on angel investors and farming out all of my equity to then be able to do merger and acquisition, where I'm going to get less accounts, but they're going to stick longer and have a better portfolio on my P&L. And I don't have money to go throw millions of dollars at ad spend to go do SEO marketing online. Where Paulus is a really unique play is that he now has enough in the bank that, dude, the guy can fund door-to-door as much as he wants, as hot and as fast as it burns, but he can simultaneously run other verticals within the company that burn slower and longer, like your SEO and like your merger and acquisition and like your technician sales and like innovating with technology so that it becomes a better consumer experience and it's not dependent on solely people, that allows it to not grow door-to-door at the detriment of your company. The company wins as door-to-door wins, because now door-to-door, instead of seeing... Sorry, Don, I got a phone call and it took it off.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, I got a phone call from the CRO in the middle of that call, and it took it off. Sorry, bro.
So, no, you're good.
Anyway,
you're good. It'll stay together.
Now I can just visualize door-to-door as this machine that can print customers for me, and I can simultaneously make the business look really sexy at the same time. And that had never really happened without somebody as big and successful as Mike, who A, has the capital, and B, knows the means and methods, because he's done it at 2 other companies that he already publicly sold, to make your SEO and your other verticals effective enough to get it done. And that's really what makes Hawks a unique beast right now.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. I think the cash flow portion is probably one of the biggest assets that Hawks has compared to some of these other companies. Kind of transitioning into more along the lines of potentially people that are just kind of getting exposed to this opportunity and what it can do for them. Talk to me a little bit about how you've seen some people come into this industry without any sales experience, and kind of the changes that you've seen them go through, and the really the successes that they've had, either coming into door-to-door or also transitioning into some other avenues where they have learned what they've needed to learn from this opportunity, and kind of taken it and ran with it into something else.
Well, I think the beautiful thing is, I think a lot of times guys will come into this industry for quote unquote sex appeal. And what I mean by that is, it's like, dude, I want to go make the 20 grand, and look at that guy, he's driving a nice car, or oh my gosh, like he's only 20 years old and he has a house already. And they kind of have this, nowadays I think the generation in college, everyone wants passive income through real estate. So they see guys that have that, and they're like, I'm gonna go follow the road to the end of the line there. But I think once they come in here, those of us that are leaders in the company understand that there's a real stewardship placed on our shoulders to convert them from wanting success to significance. And really the difference there is, success is getting what I want, but sometimes I get what I want and I find out I hate what I got. And significance, on the other hand, is wanting what you get. And so all of a sudden they come over here and they're 20 years old and they learn, oh my gosh, as a 1099 employee, I can now deploy tax strategy like I never could as a W-2 employee. So early on, I'm already leveraging a huge portion of my income I get to keep moving forward, all ethically and the right way. It's a massive skill set you wouldn't get elsewhere. It also,
right,
really early on, they start to learn how to make their money invest and work for them rather than against them. Okay, where they have assets that we're helping them put it into. They have an equitable skill set. There's not a job on planet Earth that you can do without sales skills, Don. It doesn't matter what it is, because 100%. you're gonna have to land the job in the first place, and that's sales. Really, yep. Sales isn't this car salesman idea that we have. Sales is just psychology of how to win friends and influence people. And so that in itself pays more dividends than almost anything else. But in the company at the same time, we bring in weekly and monthly somebody to sit down and talk about, you want to get into real estate investments, here's how you do it. Hey, let's sit down and talk about how to build LLCs and have that strategy. Let me talk to you about like SBA loans and how to land those and what makes sense there, and how to leverage an FHA to get your first home so you're 21, 22, paying yourself on a mortgage, which, by the way, the interest on that mortgage is a tax deduction, versus saying, hey, like, I'm just paying somebody else with rent. And so I think what starts to happen is they get surrounded by things like that, and it's so different from the way the world thinks, that it's like, give me my set job, and I want to work 9 to 5, not be that mentally engaged, that all of a sudden your life moves heaps and bounds forward faster than elsewhere. And really you start to see people in their mid-20s that you're like, there's no way you're not 30 years old, 40 years old. Like, bro, you're just so equipped to handle difficult situations and fires that come up, and relating with other people and knowing how to talk to them and knowing how to be eloquent in speech. And at the same time, it seems like you've got all your finances in order in your life, and
You've got a pulse on your credit, how to handle all that. And it's just really, we treat it, like I said, is our job here is to fundamentally move forward the lifestyle of somebody where they're surrounded by really high level smart people versus just a job you clock in, clock out, that's a paycheck. I think that's what makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that me and Riley were just talking about is, show me your network and I'll show you your net worth. And I think that's a big thing within the door-to-door industry and Hawks in general, is that you're just around a lot of high-level people that constantly strive to become better versions of themselves. And I think that's something that, potentially a lot of newer sales reps don't necessarily understand that's also a part of the opportunity.
Well, and if they just think about it logically, there's no other way that works. The job's so hard and demands so much that if you're not willing to think, how can I become the best version of myself, you're going to quit. You're going to just decide, like, dude, I could make the same in some other job. There's no reason for me to be here when it's 10 times harder. And you're just not succeeding the level you want because you're not truly buying into self-development. But those that stay have to buy into self-development. It's almost your pay to play to stay around.
Absolutely. Yeah, and kind of the last thing that we'll chat about is if you can pretend like I'm a brand new person looking to get into the industry. You've kind of already mentioned, some pieces of advice. But what would you tell somebody that's, thinking about it? They like how the opportunity looks, but they're just trying to kind of wrap their head around if it's a good decision for them.
The number one thing, so my brother just got home from his mission, going to school at BYU, fresh plate. He has to come do this. He's going to come sell in the summer, and he knows why. He's my brother, and he doesn't really have an option. But the reason I tell him he has to, and my dad now having seen me do this for so long, and my mom, that quite frankly was the most opposite person of this at the beginning, tells him he has to, because there's so much involved in the world right now that's going to tell you how to think, Don. You got media spitting at you, no matter what your political beliefs are, that's going to tell you how to think. You have constant advertisements trying to insert themselves into your brain, telling you what to buy and what's cool and what the trends and what the fads are. So you become so obsessed on social media and all those things that I think we've really lost our ability to critically think as people. And what we don't understand is that at the end of the day, those that are managers in whatever field you want to go into, or high-level people, they're not only there because they're better at their job than you are. They get there because what do they manage? Well, they manage people. And people skills are critical thinking skills. They're the ability to sit down and diagnose a process, and there's no institution anymore that creates that. You go to college and it has its value and its worth, giving you technical skills for your field, but nowhere are you sitting down and really learning a lot of people skills, by and large. And if there is a major that has that out there, most people don't pick it. So at the end of the day, it's like what this becomes is an institution to just sit there, and it is an incubator for people skills that allows you to be surrounded by people that tell you that you decide what to think. You decide how to think. You decide what you're worth. You decide the type of life you want to live in it. It really brings back in, like, dude, let me help you critically think. Let me help you journal. Let me help you use your mind as the instrument to your success versus just going through the machine that seems like everything in the world's trying to create nowadays. And if nothing else, that's the number one most valuable reason to come do this job as a rookie, if you were to ask me. That's what has paid the number one biggest dividend in my life leading to where I'm at now.
Yeah, 100%. I could not agree more with that statement. Well, Parker, I appreciate it. That's pretty much all I had for you today. I am super excited to continue on this journey with someone like yourself. And like I said, I appreciate you coming on the call today.
Thanks, Don. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure.
Perfect. See ya.
Peace.